Here we go. 490. There was a hermaphrodite kid made a pass at a man from... Oh, I buggered that one, didn't I? There was a hermaphrodite kid made a pass at a man from Madrid. Why, you son of a maggot, do you think I'm a faggot? Just go fuck yourself. So he did. 1943. 491. There was a young lady whose mind was never especially refined. She got on her knees, her lover to please, who stuck in his prick from behind. I like that one. 1939. There once was There once was a well-groomed young Nance who responded to every advance. But rather than strip, he let anything slip through a hole in the seat of his pants. Very clever. 1942. 493. There was a young man from Nantasket who screwed a dead whore in a casket. He allowed 'twas no vice, but thought it was nice, for she needed no money, nor did ask it. Yes. 1947. 494. There was a young man from Nantucket who had such a big cock he could suck it. He looked in the glass and saw his own ass and broke his neck trying to fuck it. 1939-ish. Should a fellow discover some night a girl's body in bed, it's all right. He should think it good luck and accept the free fuck. He will bugger her too if he's bright. 1941. 496. There was a captain of Mag 94, more easily had than a two-bit whore. He wanted to drink and fondle your dink, but he's not around anymore. It was such a loss for everyone. 1945. 497. There once was a doughty Norwegian who enlivened the French foreign legion. But his brothers in arms who succumbed to his charms all got clap in the hindermost region. Hindermost, I like that word. We need to bring that back. 1941. Pardon me. 498. There was a young fellow named Oakham whose brags about fucking were hokum, for he really preferred to suck cocks and stir turd. He was queen of the flits in Hoboken. 1941. 499. Said Oscar McDingalo Figgle with an almost hysterical giggle, last night I was sick with delight when my prick felt dear Alfred's delicious arse wiggle. 1941. Ooh, here's 500. That's a nice round number. There was a young man of Oswego whose friend said, "Be off now to Seago." He learned there the trick of skinning his prick and up arses thrusting his pigo. Pego? Pigo. I'm sure someone will correct me. 1870. Oh, that's a long time ago. 501. A young queer who was much oversexed was easily fretted and vexed. When out on a date, he hardly could wait to say, "Turn over, bud, my turn next." Turn over, bud, my turn next. 1942. 502. There was a young man of Peru who dreamt he was had by a Jew. He woke up at night in a hell of a fright and found it was perfectly true. What's happening here? Still rolling. What was the next one here? Coming up. 503. There were three young men in Peru, a German, a bugger, a Jew. The German, he buggered the bugger, the bugger he buggered the Jew. 1941. 504. There was an old man from Pinole. Take two this time with feeling. There was an old man from Pinole who always got it in the wrong hole. And when he withdrew all covered with goo, his temper was out of control. 1942. Well, you'd think he would have been calmed down since he released the goo. But I guess oh my goodness! Stop calling. Spam calls. You'd think I would have the sense enough to turn down the volume. 505. A phenomenal fellow named Preston has a hair-padded lower intestine. Ew. Though exceedingly fine in the buggery line, it isn't much good for digestion. 1952. 506. A man who is lacking in pride attends funerals far, near, and wide. When asked about this, his reply is, "It's bliss to bugger a piece of dead hide." 1946. 507. I'm going to stop reading the years. Do we really? We know they're all old. My goodness. I'm annoying myself. Here we go with 507. "I'll do it for art. I'm no prude," he said as he posed in the nude. But on viewing his ass, the whole fairy class decided it ought to be screwed. 508. There was an old man of Ramnugger who drove a rare trade as a bugger, till a fair young Circassian brought fucking in... Ooh. Maybe it's Circassian. Here we go. Let's start from the top. There was an old man of Ramnugger who drove a rare trade as a bugger, till a fair young Circassian brought fucking in fashion and spoilt all the trade in Ramnugger. Let's move on. 509. There once was an apple-checked runt who was welcomed with joy at the front. This God gifts to He-Man prevented spilled semen, for his ass was tattooed like a cunt. Clever. 510. It says, Royal spasm in 5 fits. Here we go. Thus spake the king of Siam, "For women I don't care a damn, but a fat-bottomed boy is my pride and joy. They call me a bugger, I am." "Indeed," quoth the king of Siam, "for cunts I just don't give a damn. They haven't the grip, nor the velvety tip, nor the scope of the asshole of man." Then up spake the Bey of Algiers, and said to his harem, "My dears, you may think it odd of me, but I've given up sodomy. Tonight there'll be fucking." Loud cheers. Then up spake the young king of Spain, "To fuck and to bugger is pain, but it's not infra-dig on occasion to frig, and I do it again and again." Then up spoke a Hindu mahout, and said, "What's all this blithering about? Why, I shoot my spunk up an elephant trunk, cries of shame, he's a shit, throw him out." That was a long one. Okay, 515. There was a young lady named Spruce, whose favorite thrill was a goose. Just the sight of a thumb made her tuchus all numb, and her bowels got excited and loose. In Glasgow, a tender tapeworm was so starved that he could barely squirm, until his host finally was buggered divinely, and Jimmy had Vaseline and sperm. I guess the tapeworm's name was Jimmy. I didn't know they had proper names. How interesting. A whole new world out there. 517. Meet Elmer, young son of the Thorpes, afflicted with psychotic warps. His idea of fun is to bugger a nun and then vomit all over the corpse. Well, that's an interesting time for a young Elmer. Oh, I remember an old one. How do you get a nun pregnant? You fuck her. What type of meat do priests eat on Friday? None. During the Lenten season, of course. 518. An earnest young woman in Thrace said, "Darling, that's not the right place." So he gave her a thwack and did on her back what he couldn't have done face to face. 519. Close to long-ass blonde coconut tree, one fellow Mary come up long me. Sit down long grass, I got big fellow ass, I talk I like push long me. 519, I most likely read it wrong. Let's just move on. 520. There was a young colonel from Trent who lived in a lavender tent. Oh, my. He said that some sessions with interesting Hessians had taught him what war really meant. This one's called Who'll Bugger the Turk? "I," said Gladstone, "as chief of the nation and premier of England to gain reputation, I'll bugger the Turk and ne'er let him shirk my prick's grand demonstration." Well, I butchered that one. 522. Said Senator David I. Walsh, "These charges against me are false, though I did go to Brooklyn for suckling and fuckling, not a gob laid his hands on my Bolsh." I imagine he's talking about his Bolshak in his pants. 523, the good ship Venus. The good ship's name was Venus, her mast a towering penis, her figurehead a whore in bed, a pretty sight by Jesus. The first mate's name was Andy, by God he was a dandy. They broke his cock with chunks of rock for conking in the brandy. Continuing as I turn the page. The second mate was Morgan. By God, he was a gorgon. 9 times a day fine tunes he'd play on his reproductive organ. The captain's daughter Mabel, they screwed when they were able. They nailed her tits, those lousy shits, right to the captain's table. The captain's other daughter, they threw her in the water. You could tell by the squeals that some of the eels had found her reproductive quarter. The cabin boy was the captain's joy, a cunning little nipper. They filled his ass with broken glass and circumcised the skipper. I didn't read that really well. The cabin boy was the captain's joy, a cunning little nipper. A cunning little nipper. They filled his ass with broken glass and circumcised the skipper. Then in search of new sensation, in the forms of recreation, the ship was sunk in a wave of gunk from mutual masturbation. It happens. It happens to the best of us. What can you do? I say get a mop and clean it up. Get a mop and clean it up. Oh, moving on to abuses of the clergy. 5:30. There was a young lady named Alice who peed in a Catholic chalice. She said, "I do this from a great need to piss and not from sectarian malice." Do Hail Marys to our fathers and do it a good act of contrition. For God's sakes, clean the chalice before Mass starts. Ew. Pee-pee and wine, not a good mixture. Here we go, 5:31. There was a young girl in Alsace who was having her first piece of ace. I guess Alsace, piece of ass. Oh, darling, you'll kill me. Oh, dearest, you thrill me like Father John's thumb after Mass. Oh, Father. Naughty boy. 532. Moving on. A modern monk nicknamed Augustine, his penis a boy's bottom thrustin'. Then said Father Ignatius, now really, good gracious, your conduct is really disgusting. 533. There was a young pansy named Birch, who developed a taste for the church, and amongst priests and preachers and such mouthy creatures were the uplifted ends of his search. 534. There were 3 young ladies of Birmingham, and this is the scandal concerning 'em. They lifted the frock and tickled with the cock of the bishop engaged in confirming 'em. I would have loved to have seen that. Now the bishop was nobody's fool. He'd been to a good public school. So he took down their breeches and buggered those bitches with his 10-inch episcopal tool. Then up spoke a lady from Kew, and said as the bishop withdrew, the vicar is quicker and thicker and slicker and longer and stronger than you. And you would know, wouldn't you, you naughty little tot? 537. There was a young bishop from Brest who openly practiced incest. My sisters and nieces are all dandy pieces, and they don't cost a cent, he confessed. There was a young curate of Buckingham who was blamed by the girls for not fucking him. He said, though my cock is as hard as a rock, your cunts are too slack. Put a tuck in him. I like that one. 539. There was a young lady of Sheen who crept into the vestry unseen. She pulled down her knickers and also the vicar's and said, how about it, old bean? 540. There was a young lady of Chichester. Oh, no. Again. There was a young lady of Chichester who made all the saints in their niches stir. One morning at matins, her breast in white satins made the Bishop of Chichester's breeches stir. Oh, that was hard to say. 541. A young curate just new to the cloth. At sex was surely no sloth. He preached masturbation to his whole congregation and was washed down the aisle on the froth. That's very clever. I once had the wife of a dean 7 times while the dean was out skiing. She remarked with some gaiety, not bad for the laity, though the bishop once managed 15. 13. I misread that. 543. There was a young choir boy from Devon who was raped in a haystack by Savon. High Anglican priests, lascivious beasts, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. You know I read that totally wrong. Take 2. There was a young choir boy from Devon who was raped in a haystack by 7 high Anglican priests, lascivious beasts, for such is the kingdom of heaven. 544. There was a young monk from Dundee who hung a nun's cunt on a tree. Of course he did. He grabbed her fair ass and performed a high mass that even the Pope came to see. 545. There was a young curate of Eltham who wouldn't fuck girls, but he felt 'em. In lanes he would linger and play at stink finger and scream with delight when he smelt 'em. 546. A big Catholic layman named Fox makes his living by sucking off cocks. In spells of depression, he goes to confession and jacks off the priest in his box. The priest, a cocksucker named Sheen, is delighted their sins aren't seen. Though God sees through walls, says Monsignor, oh, balls, this God stuff is simply a screen. 548. There was an archbishop in France who saw a nude woman by chance. The result, I affirm, was emission of sperm in the archiepiscopal pants. There once was a priest of Gibraltar who wrote dirty jokes in his psalter. An inhibited nun who had read every one made a vow to be laid on his altar. 550. There was a young lady named Jessery who got deflowered while in a confessory. The priest who thus wrecked her would scorn a protector, while she never heard of a pessary. 551. There was an old abbot of Keefe who thought the impenitent thief had bollocks of brass and an amethyst ass. He died in this awful belief. There was a young monk of Kilkire, was smitten with carnal desire. The immediate cause were the abbess's drawers, which hung up to dry by the fire. Quite the fetish. There was a young rector of Kings, whose mind was on heavenly things, but his heart was on fire for a boy in the choir whose ass was like jelly on springs. Oh, I'd like to see that, jelly on springs. What's the difference between jam and jelly? Nobody ever tried to jelly a cock in your ass, you dirty dog, you. 554. Oh, my goodness, Latin? I don't speak Latin, but I can do the rhyming part, so bear with me. Apud rege tutor vateremus, pullaria odet profanus, semper optandus, puere sperandus, gelefactus incilis anus. Profanus and anus. 555. When a lecherous curate at Leeds was discovered one day in the weeds, astride a young nun, he said, Christ, this is fun! Far better than telling one's beads. 556. Oh, my goodness. I double-clutched that one. A Sunday school student in Mass soon rose to the head of the class by reciting quite bright and by sleeping at night with his tongue up the minister's ass. Makes sense to me. 557. In Kansas there lived a young monk who often was in a blue funk, for his cum always throws. What? Once again, from the top. In Kansas there lived a young monk who often was in a blue funk, for his cum always froze on the sister's thick hose, and they never would part with a chunk. 558. A lecherous bishop of Peoria, in a state of constant euphoria, enjoyed having fun with a whore or a nun while chanting the Sanctus and Gloria. Good for him. 559. There was a gay rector of Poole, most deservedly proud of his tool. With some trifling aid from the curate to aid, he rogered the national school. 560. A hoary old monk of Regina once said, There is nothing diviner than to sit in one cell and let one's mind dwell on the charms of the Virgin's vagina. Vagina. 561. There was a young man of St. Giles who'd walk thousands and thousands of miles from the Cape of Good Hope just to bugger the Pope, but he couldn't. The pontiff had piles. Oh, they're so painful. You would know them today as, what are they called? I'm having a blank spot in my brain right now. Hemorrhoids. Look up the spelling. It's like hem-hor-hoids. 562. There was an old abbess quite shocked to find nuns where the candles were locked. Said the abbess,
"You nuns should behave more like guns and never go off till you're cocked."
563.
There was a young monk of Siberia, who of frigging grew weary and wearier. At last with a yell he burst from his cell and buggered the Father Superior.
Yeah, you can only take so much, right? You have to have that sweet release. Oh my goodness, there's another one in Siberia. 564. There was a young monk from Siberia whose morals were very inferior. He did to a nun what he shouldn't have done, and now she's a mother superior. 565. 3 lustful young ladies of Sims were blessed with such oversized quims. The bishop of their diocese got elephantiasis, for his life wasn't all singing hymns. Good on him. 566.
A medieval recluse named Sissions was alarmed by his nightly emissions. His cellmate Assad said, "Leave it to God," and taught him some nifty positions.
567. There once was a bishop of Treat who decided to be indiscreet, but after one round to his horror he found you repeat and repeat and repeat. 568. A bishop whose see was Vermont used to jerk himself off in the font. The baptistry stank with an odor most rank, and no one would sit up in front. I don't blame him. It smelled like fresh pike or a fish factory or something nasty. 569. Said a Palestine pilgrim named Wadham, "For religion I don't give a goddam." Maybe it's Wadham and goddamn. I frequently peed in the Garden of Eden and buggered my guide when in Sodom. One in Rome. Here we go. We'll end it up with 570, a nice round number. The Bishop of Winchester Junction found his phallus would no longer function. So in black crape he wound it, tied a lily around it, and solemnly gave it last unction. My, those were nice. I enjoyed those. I hope you did too. Until next time, ta-ta!